So we're going to do a labor update as we do most weeks. One of the encouraging things that I see in today's day and age is the labor movement, and you love to see workers finally standing up and wielding their power against management. You love to see a tight enough labor market that allows the workers to do it. We have an article here in More Perfect Union. I often use More Perfect Union, obviously, and I encourage you all to follow them at More Perfect US on Twitter. This is an article about Amazon. Here's how Amazon is strangling small businesses. Amazon is doing a big Ponzi scheme, an insider tells us. When asked about the American Innovation and Choice Online Act 3 months ago, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer reaffirmed his commitment to the sweeping tech antitrust bill. Senator Schumer, his office said, supports the Judiciary Committee endorsed legislation that promotes small business and innovation. After years of watching a small cabal of unaccountable corporations take control of a growing swath of American commerce, a bipartisan group of senators finally had enough. The United States Senate had a bill ready to regulate big tech. Currently, America's 4 technology giants, Amazon, Google, Apple, and Meta, can favor their own products and services over those of small businesses. That means an independent brand selling on Amazon can find itself below an Amazon-manufactured product in search rankings, despite seemingly better reviews and prices. Lower search rankings translate to lower sales. Critics argue that this dynamic coerces small businesses into giving more money to the platform through advertising to boost their search results. The American Innovation and Choice Online Act, championed by Senator Amy Klobuchar, would level the playing field and restrict large technology platforms from this type of self-preferencing. Is that Amy Klobuchar doing a good thing? Holy shit, you guys. Are pigs flying outside? Will someone check out the window? The impact could be huge. Some analysts now argue that Amazon's advertising revenue masks otherwise unprofitable retail operations. In 2021, Amazon recorded $31 billion worth of advertising sales, while the company's retail operations recorded $6.3 billion of operating income. Without advertising, Marketplace Pulse concluded Amazon is a retailer operating at a tens of billions dollar loss. Given that the legislation is seemingly an existential threat to their core business models, technology companies and their industry allies have unleashed a barrage of lobbying activity. High-level executives are lobbying Congress, with Amazon CEO Andy Jassy personally calling senators from Apple CEO Tim Cook, meeting lawmakers one-on-one at the Capitol. According to Bloomberg, in the first 3 months of 2022, the 4 technology giants identified antitrust regulation as their top legislative priority. So far, they have spent $16.7 million to defeat it. Technology industry trade groups spent upwards of $22 million on television advertising during a single week in May. Senator Schumer, whose 2 daughters work for separate tech giants, has continued to support the bill in statements while postponing the vote. Speaking to donors last week, Schumer claimed that tech antitrust doesn't have enough support to pass, contradicting the bill's sponsors, who say they have 60 votes lined up. The postponement is a victory for the technology giants, as it's widely believed that the bill faces dire odds if it isn't passed this summer. While Schumer delays, American small business owners are stuck operating in an increasingly exploitative system. Quote, I just think Amazon is doing a big Ponzi scheme, a Fulfillment by Amazon consultant told More Perfect Union in a phone interview. So Amazon's very business model is borderline fraudulent and exploitative of other small businesses. We covered previously how they were caught stealing products from small businesses, recreating those products, and then prioritizing their version of the product on their search engine in their search results. We've covered how they demand certain fees to third-party sellers if those third-party sellers want to have any shot of competing on Amazon. In every possible way, this company exploits everybody else around them. Their whole thing is like, we're customer first. That is at the expense of their employees, at the expense of third-party sellers that work with them, at the expense of companies like the fulfillment and all that kind of stuff. Amazon functions at the expense of all others who are engaged in business with them, most notably their employees. And as that article detailed, without some of this other fraudulent or borderline fraudulent behavior, their business model would be a catastrophic failure. They would be operating at a multi-billion-dollar loss. So Amazon essentially a scam, Kind of wild. We also have a crazy story here. I mean, this one, I've said a few times today that news consistently reads like satire. This one may be above all else. This is in Motherboard. I'm sure a number of you saw this. Chick Fil-A is asking for volunteers to work for 5 chicken sandwiches per hour. Okay. Oh, where do you even start with this one? Okay. 5. What am I supposed to do with 5 chicken sandwiches per hour? Sincerely, what am I supposed to do with that? Am I supposed to eat 5 chicken sandwiches? Or am I supposed to take those 5 chicken sandwiches and throw them in my backpack and take them home later? I mean, the absurdity of this, I had to double check this was a real story because it's just so patently absurd. North Carolina Chick Fil-A, so hard up for people to work the lunch rush. By the way, the framing on that is awful. That it's asking for volunteers from the community. This is by Matthew Galt. Shame on Matthew for that ridiculous framing. They are not hard up for people to work the lunch rush. They're refusing to pay enough to bring in workers to work the lunch rush. Treat your workers better and pay them more and provide them benefits, and you will not have a staffing problem. Very fucking simple. A Chick Fil-A in North Carolina posted a job opportunity on Facebook that offered to pay volunteers in chicken, not money. The store in Hendersonville is celebrating the opening of its new drive-through express like this. We are looking for volunteers for our new drive-through express. The Facebook post, which was just deleted after getting widely dragged, read, earn 5 free entrees per shift. Worked. Message us for details. I just don't even know where to start, you guys. I just don't even know where to start. Imagine thinking, people won't work for minimum wage. That we can't staff up at the rates that we're paying. But you know what they might work for? Imagine thinking that. And then imagine thinking that you're not going to get dragged for posting that fucking opening. Who typed that ad out? Come work for 5 chicken sandwiches, volunteer for a giant corporation. Who typed that ad out and didn't see that, this might not come off so great for us? It's incredible how these massive corporations have, they put so many resources into PR and they hire all these firms that are supposed to be experts, and they still come up with garbage like that and don't realize how offensive that's going to come off to everybody who reads it. Like it's utterly incredible. Utterly incredible. Like I said, I had to check if that story was real. I was like, is Motherboard doing satire now? That is just ridiculous. Another story here about workers. This is about Bank of America, and it is in the Intercept. It's by Ken Klippenstein and John Schwarz. Bank of America memo revealed, we hope conditions for American workers will get worse. The financial behemoth privately fears that regular people have too much leverage. A Bank of America executive stated that we hope working Americans will lose leverage in the labor market in a recent private memo obtained by the Intercept. Making predictions for clients about the U.S. economy over the next several years, the memo also noted that changes in the percentage of Americans seeking jobs should help push up the unemployment rate. The memo, a mid-year review from June 17th, was written by Ethan Harris, the head of global economics research for the corporation's investment banking arm, Bank of America Securities. Its specific aspiration, quote, by the end of next year, we hope the ratio of job openings to unemployed is down to the more normal highs of the last business cycle. The memo comes amid a push by the Federal Reserve to cool down the economy, informed by much of the same rationale, that high wages are driving inflation, which is bullshit, of course, as we've covered ad nauseum. This year, the Fed has increased interest rates for the first time since 2018. Historically, this has often caused recessions, and that is exactly what appears to be happening now. The Commerce Department reported Thursday that the gross domestic product has fallen for the second quarter in a row, indicating that a recession may have already begun. Parts of the mid-year review, in particular its emphasis on a looming recession, received press coverage at the time of the memo's release to clients. This is the first publication of the document in full. What the memo calls the ratio of job openings to unemployed is generally calculated the other way around, i.e. the ratio of unemployed people to job openings. The more widely used ratio offers one measurement of the balance of power between workers and employers. The lower this number, the more options unemployed people have when searching for work, and the greater opportunities employed people have to switch to jobs with better pay and conditions. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, this ratio stood at 0.5 as of May, meaning that there were then 2 job openings per unemployed person. In 2009, at the worst moments of the economic calamity that followed the collapse of the housing bubble during the end of the George W. Bush administration, the ratio climbed as high as 6.5. So there were more than 6 unemployed workers for each open job. It then slowly declined over the next decade, reaching 0.8 in February 2020 before COVID lockdowns began. This recent unusual moment of worker leverage made Bank of America quite anxious. The memo expressed distress about a record-tight labor market, stating that wage pressures are going to be hard to reverse. While there may have been some one-off increases in some pockets of the labor market, the upward pressure extends to virtually every industry, income, and skill level. The memo recalls a previous Bank of America memo in 2021, which it says warned of very strong momentum in the labor market, suggesting the economy would not just hit, but blow through full employment. Fast forward to today, and these trends have been worse than expected, according to their memo. So, in other words, workers have it too good, and they have too much leverage, right? Even though workers are still struggling and in catastrophic shape. So, the way that they, again, it's like it's almost the tone deafness of it that's more shocking to me. Like, I know corporations are going to, privately desire a looser labor market and a worse condition for workers, because then they can exploit those workers to a larger degree. But it's the part that actually continues to surprise me is how tone deaf they are in just overtly saying it. You know what I mean? And no one seems to realize how that's going to come off to the vast majority of the country, and they just put it out there in a piece as though it's like PR, as though that's them doing PR. Anyway, obviously this is a leaked memo. I just mean, oftentimes these come from like investor calls or whatever. Like, they're putting it out there relatively publicly, right? Or they'll say it on cable news or whatever. Like, I'm always stunned by how open they are about this aspect of it. We need to be able to fuck workers more. We need to be able to exploit workers in a worse fashion in order to, to qualm inflation. So the analysis is wrong. It's amazing, by the way, you guys, this is an obvious point, but it's so amazing how the analysis of any given situation, according to the DC elites, is always that we need to help out corporations and banks more. That's always the solution to whatever the problem might be. We either need to spend more on the military or cops, or we need to give more corporate tax breaks or fuck workers at the behest of giant corporations. It's always something like that the analysis points to, according to the DC brain rot. So, huge shout out to Double K for the super chat. Thank you so much for helping us out. Once again, you guys, realprogressives.org/donate if you want to help out, or you can drop a super chat there in the chat. We are a nonprofit, and we appreciate any help you can provide. Another story here about labor and the gig economy. This is in Market Watch. Bill to enshrine gig work into federal labor law would effectively get rid of the minimum wage and overtime compensation. Bill introduced in House would establish a new category of labor law for app-based gig workers, offering some employment protections but no wage and hour protections. And of course, that's Henry Cuellar that you see in the image there, notable for being the only anti-choice Democrat in the House, the one that Pelosi went and supported and leadership defended during the attempt to primary him from the left. A bill introduced in the U.S. House of Representatives would amend U.S. labor law to establish a new classification for gig workers, denying them the right to a minimum wage and other employment protections. The Worker Flexibility and Choice Act, notice how that's named, by the way. It's just, we were talking about the Inflation Reduction Act earlier. They're always named in ways that make it seem like they're doing the exact opposite thing of what they're actually doing. The Worker Flexibility and Choice Act, or H.R. 8442, would change the Fair Labor Standards Act so that employee does not include a person who has entered into a worker flexibility agreement, such as workers for gig companies like Uber Technologies, DoorDash, Lyft, and others. The bill would amend Internal Revenue Code to say that an individual who enters into any such agreement would not be treated as an employee, and the company for which that person performs a service would not be treated as an employer. The bill, introduced by Representative Henry Cuellar and co-sponsored by Reps. Elisa Stefanik and Michelle Steele, calls for workers subject to worker flexibility agreements to have some rights guaranteed to employees, such as those related to privacy, non-discrimination, non-harassment, non-retaliation, and safety, plus time off under the Family and Medical Leave Act. Does not call for wage and hour protections to which employees are entitled, including rules on minimum wage and overtime, and would supersede all federal, state, and local laws on wages for the workers in a worker flexibility agreement. Quote, the Bipartisan Worker Flexibility and Choice Act is important to ensure that our gig economy has the room and resources to expand, Cuellar said in a news release. Oh, my God. Oh, it's just he doesn't even address what it's actually fucking doing. Uber, DoorDash, Lyft, and other companies have been fighting to establish a new employment category that offers gig workers some protections without classifying them as employees, which would effectively cement their business models into law as they deal with continuing legal and regulatory issues related to their treatment of their millions of ride-hailed and delivery workers as independent contractors. In California, the company spent more than $200 million to pass a 2020 ballot measure that would exempt app-based gig work from state labor laws, though the measure has since been ruled unconstitutional in state court. So this is one of the neat tricks that they will use to get out of having to provide benefits or worker protections, is to call them contractors instead. And here Henry Cuellar and Stefanik, who's also a Democrat, are supporting Uber, DoorDash, Lyft, and others in their endeavor to screw over workers even further. Again, notice how, like, whenever there's a problem, the solution is always to help the giant corporations and to fuck workers over even further, right? Once again, want to shout out More Perfect Union at More Perfect US on Twitter. Go give them a follow. They do fantastic work. They're talking here about Starbucks. They say new. Starbucks is taking its union busting to an unprecedented level. A South Carolina store manager is pressing kidnapping and assault charges against unionized workers after they presented a list of demands in a store meeting. Starbucks has suspended all of the workers. Workers at the Anderson, South Carolina Starbucks won their union election by a remarkable 18-0. They jointly asked their manager to restore their hours and improve pay. As a viral TikTok indicated, the manager pushed past them, then accused workers of kidnapping. Full audio of the 6-minute meeting makes clear workers were simply stating work demands. The manager eventually calls corporate, asks if they can leave, and workers say yes. Workers will hold a press event 2 p.m. Eastern Monday at the store, which has been closed. So Starbucks continuing their trend here of illegal union-busting tactics, suspending or firing employees for union organizing or other organizing. This may have been categorized slightly separately, but it's a group of workers that have just unionized, making a series of demands of management. And she pushes past them and then accuses them of kidnapping and assault and suspends them. Manager shows up in store, accuses workers of kidnapping. I mean, again, you guys, it's like today's like an onion day in terms of some of these articles and some of these stories that we've been covering. So shame on Starbucks once again for portraying itself like a progressive company. Amazon does the same thing, you guys. They portray themselves like they are so forward-thinking and worker-friendly. We're so progressive. And then they turn around and union bust just like the rest of them. In fact, those two companies have gone to even greater lengths than a lot of massive corporations have in the past when it comes to the union busting tactics against their workers. So Starbucks needs to negotiate in good faith. They have not. They claim publicly that they intend to negotiate in good faith. Haven't done it. Been months and months and months and months and months since the first store unionized. So I stand in full solidarity with Starbucks and Amazon workers and working class people everywhere. I encourage everybody to organize in your workplace. I encourage you to talk to your coworkers about these kinds of things and not be intimidated by management and their often illegal, but at the very least distasteful tactics to try to squash those unionization and organizing efforts. So that is the labor update for the week, you guys. Some negative stories this week, but I'm always encouraged to see workers pushing back. I'm always encouraged to see these things being called out and corporations being called out for their fuckery in these ways. And I'm encouraged to see that the wave of unionization at Starbucks has been so wildly successful, and that it continues at Amazon, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And here's to hoping Bank of America is completely wrong about that tight labor market adjusting, although I do have a feeling that we are going into a recession, which may, you know, have the same effect and fuck workers over at the exact same time. So.